for y'all that don't know, like I told you, we were going to do an Instagram live video with Ed Raye of Ed Raye and Associates. This is the what is it?
It's called the Liberator.
The Liberator, right?
It's the FP45.
The FP, which stands for
FP stands for flare projector.
Yeah. Okay. So that's actually what we're going to be talking about today. A firearm that was made, I believe it was
Made in 1942.
42. Okay. So there's your background for the folks tuning in on Instagram. We're going to record this as well for this weekend's show. So let me start recording here, Ed. And
are you picking me up with
no, you have to hold it.
You
will have to hold it. Yeah. So.
I'll have to use both hands.
Okay. Well, let me see if you'll say mic check 1 2 1 2.
Mic check 1 2 1 2.
Okay. Turn you up a little bit there. All right. Okay. So we will start recording here, and I certainly appreciate you having us in.
Well, you're certainly welcome.
And once again, Ed Raye of Ed Raye and Associates, High Street Antique Mall here in Plano, Texas. Ed, thanks for having me at your store. First of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and how long you've been doing it?
Well, actually,
you have to hold the mic just a little.
Actually, I sell jewelry. I have fine jewelry, plus I have antique firearms, and I've been doing this for 30 years now.
Okay.
I've been doing it in antique malls. This is the last one I'm going to be
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. And you're from Fort Worth?
From Fort Worth, originally. Lived in Dallas for quite a while now.
Okay. Well, so let me ask you, why do you specialize in vintage weapons? What is it that makes that so appealing compared to, say, dealing with like the Sig Sauer 380 that's in my pocket?
You can get those anywhere.
Yeah.
These are, you don't see these.
No.
Okay. That's what I like. Something that's unusual. My jewelry is all unusual. The regular stuff is everywhere.
Right. Okay. Well, let me ask you about this. This is the Liberator.
It's the Liberator.
A friend of mine, he is I'm not much of an antique collector. Maybe as I get older, I will get into that. But my friend's dad is a big-time antiquer, and he was in here just looking around, and he's fascinated by old guns as well. And y'all started talking, and Ross, I ran into him the other day, and he's like, "Yeah, you gotta find out more about this Liberator. It's such a cool story." And obviously, this is a gun that I know nothing about. So I did a little research and gave you a shout. Talk about talk about the concept for this gun and kind of the background there.
Alrighty. First of all, this was in 1942. The United States decided they were going to do a little psychological warfare. There was a lot of occupied countries, and we were going to make a weapon that we could drop behind enemy lines and let resistance fighters and just the general population have a weapon. And that would probably, we hope, demoralize the enemy.
Right.
Well,
if the Gestapo didn't know that the resistance might be armed, and
they found out pretty quick.
Yeah.
It didn't take long for them to know that this wasn't a flare gun. But it was designed by I can't think of his name, Mr. Hyde. It took 6 months from inception until they actually had the finished product. It took 300 people at General Motors at the Guide Lamp Division to make this gun. They made 1 million of them in 11 weeks.
Wow, that's pretty fast.
We were supposed to drop them behind enemy lines in France, Poland, Philippines, occupied countries. We sent 450,000 of them to England, hoping that was where we're going to drop them into France for the resistance. Most of those didn't get used. They got dumped into the ocean or melted for the metal.
Wow.
We sent 450,000 of them to the OSS in the Philippines, and a lot of them got used. And 100,000, the last 100,000, went to China, and we don't know what happened to those.
Wow.
But most of them just laid out in the fields and rusted, or they got burned, or they got dumped into the ocean. So it's kind of unusual to find them. You can find them, but they're just not everywhere.
Right.
And it's a smooth bore gun, no rifling in it. I'm going to drop this down so I can show you.
Or I'll hold it for you.
Okay.
That way we can still get the sound there.
The way the gun operates is you pull this back and turn it. Of course, I'm trying to see the camera.
Yeah.
And then you open it up here, and then you drop the bullet in here. Put this down, lined it up, and that
Wow.
would have fired the gun.
Uh-huh. It's a 45
It's
caliber.
45 caliber ACP. We dropped it with 10 rounds of ammunition, 1 in the chamber and 9 of them inside. This is just storage, just not a magazine.
Uh-huh.
And
So single shot 45.
single shot 45.
Yeah.
And you had to be pretty desperate to do it.
Yeah.
It's just made out of stamped steel. That's
Yeah. And so the I guess the concept or the goal was for someone in the resistance to use this on
an enemy
occupied
soldier.
forces and then take their gun.
Take his weapons and throw this away.
Mm-hmm.
It's a throwaway gun. It has no markings on it. We didn't plan on getting them back. It was just a throwaway gun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great concept.
And the cost I was reading to manufacture each one of these was only $2.10.
Well, it varied. I've a lot of reports. It goes from $1.73 to $2.10.
Uh-huh.
So in that area is what it cost Uncle Sam.
Yeah. And in 1942, was that relatively cheap compared to other guns we were making?
That was pretty expensive for this.
Uh-huh.
You know, $1.73 and 42 was a lot of money.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, back then a quarter would buy you something.
Right. Right.
So
Right. So overall, I mean, with a million of them made, I guess the grand scheme or the plan never came to fruition. It seems like it was kind of a failure.
well, Eisenhower, the General Eisenhower at the time, wasn't too thrilled about having everybody in Europe to be armed.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't really thrilled about doing that, so he's the one that really put the stop on it.
Okay. Okay. Is there any idea about? I mean, you said half of them essentially went to England, half went to the Philippines, and 100,000 went to China.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any idea how many still remain today?
There's no idea. I have no idea.
Uh-huh. So what is the value on this Liberator right here?
They range between $2,500 and $2,700 in this condition.
Uh-huh.
If you have the box and the schematics and everything that went with it when it was originally dropped, well, it's worth about $3,500.
Wow. Oh, okay.
But very few of those survived.
Well, talk about this specific gun, because you told me a lady brought it into you, and there's a cool story that
Yeah.
goes with this. Y'all find this pretty
Now,
fascinating.
this is pretty neat. I had a customer come into me, and she liked books. This is a book. This is called Domestic Relations.
Uh-huh. For those listening on the radio, this is just a big red book.
Big red book.
Yeah.
And she liked things that were underlined and margin copies, and this one had all that. But she got out to her car, and she opened it up a little bit further into it, and
Wow.
this is what she found.
See
The
that?
gun was inside the book.
Yeah.
So she brought this to me, and she asked me, what in the world did she have? Was it a toy? And I said, no. I had my computer up, and I pulled this up, and I showed her at the time. And I purchased it from her then and there, and she was thrilled, and I was pretty happy too.
Yeah.
Because I'd never had one personally
Uh-huh.
until this happened. It was very unusual.
Yeah. Yeah. So, do you think that? I mean, this didn't come from Europe, right? This is probably some American.
No, the estate that this came from, the man had been a gun collector,
Uh-huh.
and his family had sold all the guns. They thought nobody knew the gun was in this book. $2 is what she paid for it.
$2.
$2,
And then she sold it to you for
$1,000.
$1,000. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So she walked out pretty happy.
Yeah, lucky day for her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was pretty happy.
Yeah. Well, cool. Just a nice history piece here. This Liberator, like I said, I didn't know anything about it. A plan that really that didn't work out, but at the end of the day,
It's a great idea.
yeah, it really was. So single shot 45 ACP to drop behind enemy lines.
Nobody in the services ever used this gun. The United States never used this gun.
Right, right.
It was all to be dropped behind enemy lines.
Uh-huh. And when they were mass producing it at General Motors, I believe that they kept that under wraps. It was a big secret, obviously, and nobody knew about
Yeah,
it.
the Guide Lamp division made this one. The inland division of General Motors was making the M1 carbine at the same time. So they didn't want to get them mixed up and confused. And this, of course, was a secret.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to have been a flare gun and not a pistol. In fact, the nomenclature of the gun was totally foreign from a pistol. The barrel was called a tube.
Uh-huh.
The trigger was called a yoke. The trigger guard was called a spanner. And the firing pin was actually called a control rod.
Wow.
So that's the nomenclature of the little gun.
Yeah.
So that if enemy agent saw it, well, he wouldn't know what paperwork was on it.
Right, right. Well, this might be a little bit of a silly question, but so when you're dropping, I mean, this is not, it's kind of heavy. When you're dropping something this heavy out of an airplane behind enemy
Well,
lines.
no, it was put in a box.
Okay.
They put it in a box.
Uh-huh.
They had a schematic with cartoon type figures showing how to use it. No words because it went to different countries. And they had a wooden dowel so they could punch out the empty brass in case they get another shot.
Yeah.
And they had 10 rounds of ammunition. And it was in the box. The box had been dumped in paraffin so it would be weatherproof.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just airdropped them in those boxes. And when they hit, well, of course, they just bounced. And
Yeah. Okay.
of course, some were destroyed, I'm sure. But
Yeah. Well, fascinating history piece here. You know, I love looking back at old guns and kind of how we've evolved to what we carry and use every day.
Oh, yeah.
And, this is definitely something that stood out to me. Let me ask you here, as we kind of wrap things up, though, what is the oldest firearm that you have here currently, or the oldest that you've ever dealt with?
Well, the oldest one I've ever had is one I have now. It's a matchlock rifle, or it's a muzzle loader. It's a musket.
Uh-huh.
It was made in Japan in the mid 1700s.
Wow. So this is a Japanese musket.
And if you would hold this for
Yeah.
me, this is a matchlock.
Uh-huh.
This one they had a long cord, which was used as a fuse. They'd soak it in saltpeter so that it would burn. They'd thread it through this hole.
Uh-huh.
Then they'd thread it back through this hole, come around and put it inside the hammer with the burning end down. And then whenever they were ready to fire it, they'd open up this covered the pan up so that the powder wouldn't accidentally go off. Then they'd just drop the burning end into the powder and that would ignite it.
Uh-huh.
And this one is a 46 caliber.
Uh-huh. And how old is it?
This was made in the mid 1700s.
Wow. I'm just looking at the
beautiful
craftsmanship here for something that is that old. The wood is beautiful and the
And here's something
ornate
that's
stuff
unusual.
there.
The gun itself, the barrel, the only metallurgist in Japan at that time were the swordsmiths. So they had them make the barrel out of swords.
Wow.
The swords were heated and wrapped around an iron rod like a Damascus barrel. The iron rod then later punched out, and they had a barrel, a tube, and they dress it down, and that was their barrel. And the swordsmiths, these are made of swords, and the samurai carried this gun. This was a samurai weapon, and they were getting away from the swords, but they didn't get all the way away from them because they had a sword here.
Very cool. Very
Steel
cool.
sword.
Yeah.
And
Well,
this
awesome
was
stuff.
before they had shoulder stocks. This was called a cheek stock. You just put up to your cheek, aim, and fire.
Oh, yeah. Very cool.
This is
That's
the
an
oldest
awesome
one.
piece of history as well. Yeah.
Mid 1700s.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, Ed, if folks want to find you and check in, I know you've got a bunch of antique guns and knives as
Got
well.
a bunch.
Yeah. So how can they find you?
They just come to 800 North Central Expressway in Plano at High Street Antique Mall. And just walk in the door and ask them for Ed Raye's booth, and they'll tell you.
That's what I did. Well, thanks, Ed. We certainly appreciate it.
Well, you're certainly welcome.
Enjoyed it.
Enjoyed it.